Welcome back to Trinidad and Tobago. I'm Hema Ramkissoon, and this is the Morning Brew. And at this time, we're beginning our conversation of fuel feud. The Petroleum Dealers Association, as well as UNIPET, they're both represented this morning. And these are the gentlemen that are here to give their side of the story. In a short bit, we'll be speaking with the Minister of Energy to get the other side. Where does the government stand? But in the midst of all of this, and as this tug of war continues, the consumers, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago are the ones that felt the action yesterday. Well, everyone is staying clear of the word protest. Well, this morning we're going to find out exactly how Dexter Riley as well as Robin Naraynsingh would describe yesterday's action. Good morning. How are you both?
Hi, good morning, Hema.
Good morning.
Hi, good morning.
Now, Mr. Riley, let me ask, I'm going to start with you from a UNIPET perspective. I see that even in the statements, everyone is staying clear of the word protest. How would you describe the actions of yesterday? Or what were the actions yesterday?
Hema, it wasn't a protest. It was a financial reality that resulted in an inability to provide fuel to our valued customers. And it is rooted in the fact that the industry has been financially challenged by inadequate margins for many years, as well as increased levies since 4 years ago.
You have 25 gas stations that are UNIPET operated by independent operators. Now, Mr. Naraynsingh, let me ask you the same thing. Okay. How would you describe the actions of yesterday? Because the population would describe it as a protest.
Hema, our industry has been declining. It's almost at a depressed state right now. If you drive around our country and you see the state of our gas stations, you know that you are not getting adequate service or the service that you deserve. And this crisis is a looming crisis, and it will reach catastrophic proportions in a very short time. As a result of this, this is just a warning to let you know what will become of this. I have been in this business for so many years, you know, and to see an industry that I worked in just collapse is very hard to bear. You know, it's really gut-wrenching.
Are we talking about, when you use the word collapse, is it simply the UNIPET-run stations that are feeling this margin pinch? Because yesterday, the NP stations, or distribution stations, continued operations.
You see, NP stations, NP have a big stick over some of the dealers. They have a contract, and they are always threatened. It is as though you are living in a Gestapo state. You know, you cannot, you know, make a decision, or else you'll be vilified, and you know, people be vindictive towards you. And this is what dealers are torn with. They agonize over these decisions. If they are given a free will, they will all come and speak very candidly to you. But some of them are very, you know, guarded in what they say.
Now, let me ask you, you know, I know that you both are not using the word protest. Dexter Riley, was this simply a UNIPET and UNIPET operators flexing their muscles to prove a point to the country about to prove a point to the country that they're basically, the citizens are the ones that felt the brunt for you to prove a point?
No, Hema. UNIPET is a very professional organization that's committed to its customers, its valued customers. This was a situation that we all regret. This is a situation that we were distressed by. Yesterday, I spent the day driving around the network, having conversations with the dealers, and they were scrambling to find funding so we can reopen. So it's nothing about flexing muscles. This is a situation of crisis.
You describe it as a crisis. Now, you talk about the profit margins and unsustainability. Now, again, are we just talking about an unsustainable model for the UNIPET operators? Because even though Mr. Naraynsingh says there's a big stick approach, the NP operators are not saying anything.
That's a question that both Mr. Naraynsingh and NP network can respond to. I will say that the CEO of National Petroleum made a proposal to the government, and he said he told me, and he told the minister in one of his speech at the opening of the Sawa and El Sicuro gas station, that he had made a proposal for margin increase. So far, we have not heard anything. Remember, sales are declining, you know. Fuel sales are declining in Trinidad, liquid fuel sales. There are other things that are happening in our industry.
Other things like what?
CNG, there's electric cars. People are driving less. People are losing their jobs. They're driving less. So there's a downward trend in the consumption of liquid fuels. And this could be borne out by the CEO of Unipet or NP. They can tell you. And I can tell you from my accounts, there have been decline in sales.
Okay, so sales are declining. Now, is it simply about a lack of innovation on the part of the dealers that they cannot? Because sales and market conditions change all the time.
That's right. That's right. But think about it. We are locked in a regulated, the most stringent regulated industry. There's no way you can, what you can innovate in. The sites are curtailed by size. You know, there's regulations and there's only so much you can do. If you free it up, well then dealers, this is exactly the point. If you free it up, we can innovate.
Now, when we talk, it's interesting you mentioned the regulation. Was there a meeting with the regulator yesterday? My sources say that there was supposed to be a meeting.
Hema, I'm not too sure about your sources, but we reached out to the regulator. We didn't get any responses apart from one of the officers. But at the end of the day, we wrote a letter to the PS. And
in that letter, what are you requesting?
We communicated what was the state of affairs in our network and in the industry. We reiterated the state of affairs in the industry, and we asked for action. All the information as required, all the numbers have been submitted a number of times. We started 4 years ago, and we're convinced that it requires the will and the determination to act.
Now, Mr. Charlie, yesterday you were saying that your dealers were given no other option because of operating costs. Operating costs continue the way that they are. Are gas stations open this morning?
Yes.
Will they be, again, because the operating costs, unless you have some miraculous change, and we know the lethargic state of policy changes in this country. So what assurances that you have next week that you're not going to say you're going to shut down operations for a day or two to stabilize your costs?
Hema, some of our dealers operated until their fuel ran out yesterday. Yesterday, it was a situation of inability for us to supply the product. So it's not an action. There's high risk that we will run out of product in the short future because it's all about juggling our ability to pay the supplier. And that is a challenge.
You know, a lot of times we've been hearing about this business model. And Mr. Ryan, maybe you can break it down for us. So we talk about the taxes, the business levy, the regulator. Explain to me the operations that go into this business model.
Sure. So at the top of the supply chain, it's Paria. They would import the product, and the two wholesalers will. Paria gets a margin. Paria gets margins for different cost profile, and they get a margin, a profit margin as well. We get the wholesalers get one margin, and that margin is to finance the capex in the service stations and the opex part of it. We distribute the product to the wholesalers, providing assurance around quality in the supply chain and information. And the retailers, they get a margin as well, a fixed margin for distributing to the public. That margin has not been actively managed. It's passive. That's a very outdated way in which margins are managed in today's world. There's hardly any country that does it anymore. What they do now is active management of the margins, which is they do an assessment of the environment. They look at the forecast of the needs of the industry, and they calculate the required margin. We have been to regional markets, and that's what they do.
Oh, now, so we're going to ask whether or not, how is our model different to, let's say, other CARICOM countries as well as international jurisdictions? So
in CARICOM, they have a mix of active management of the margins, and which they do a review every 2 years, sometime every year, and they calculate the needs of the industry, look at the capex and the opex requirements, and they determine the margin. And the majority of the world is free, driven by market forces.
If we drive this by market forces, then
Yes.
what is going to be the impact on the consumer? If it is that the dealers get their way, or you say that there's going to be a level of alacrity in this, what are we talking about the impact on the consumer?
So let me comment on what happens regionally and what I believe will happen in Trinidad. The market that is free, in terms of it's private, the margin is 600% higher than Trinidad and Tobago. So that's what the potential is. But I know the current players will be responsible. And what we will do is to make sure that the business is viable so we can drive innovation and invest in innovation and invest in young people and invest in industry while having a fair return and not having high prices. That's what our commitment will be.
Because you know that's the fear of the consumer, that if the dealers get their way, that it's going to mean an increase, not in the price of the pump, because we do have a very a fixed margin there, but it's going to result in cost increases at a time when the country is saying that the economy and the cost of living is rising.
Well, that's a very good question. No, so we've been very clear, and we've been the conversations we had with the regulator thus far is a cost neutral proposal we have. So it's not going to affect the prices at the pump. The subsidy at its peak has been $5 billion, yes. And now it's just above 200 million. There's an opportunity to adjust the margins and not be burdensome.
Are you fearful that your actions, you will face some repercussions for the actions yesterday?
That has been a sentiment in our supply chain, amongst our network, etc. But it's not an action. It is a cry out for help. It's a crisis.
Will you have another crisis or cry out for help before the month and before we go to the end of the month? Will there be another cry out to action next month?
We are committed to avoid that happening, but it is highly likely it can.
You know, Mr. Naraysingh, looking at the fact that you talk about the industry as being in crisis and collapsing, are dealers leaving the industry? Are they saying, I'm going to pack up shop and say that this is no longer a viable option to me?
Hema, as a matter of fact, right now, I know of 2 dealers that are being forced out of the industry. They are given termination letters from NP. They're indebted to NP because of how the industry, how they receive their supply from National Petroleum. Also, I want to say you asked the question about leaving. Because people have invested so much of their time, their effort, their money, their family into a business, they just don't walk away from it. It's like if your family is in crisis, do you walk away from them?
Well, then you must think it's salvageable that you're staying there.
So, of course.
This is a business, it's not a family. Family you have no choice about.
All over the world, retailers would tell you they live in hope. They always think things will go better, get better. And then finally they die, you know, it crashes.
Well, then you're an eternal optimist.
No, I've seen it. If you read the retail records.
So then if we hold on to that, Matt, if we hold on to that, then things will get better. So then there's no need for a protest.
Nobody's protesting. Nobody's protesting. It's just things have been crumbling around us.
I could comment on that, though. And because we are fully private. Mm-hmm. All our members are private. Over the years, we have acquired one of our locations because of a dealer was in difficulty, couldn't pay, so we acquired the location. And there was a mutually agreement. And subsequent to that, we have had 2 stations closed down and exit. You'll be familiar with Sandy Grande and Siparia. Right. And we have 3 others where they were facing similar fate, and we took them over and operate them because the dealer can no longer sustain it. And we have 3 others about to exit, and they want us to take it over. We will be happy to do that because we committed to the various communities we operate in. The problem is the margin we can't do it any further. What
do you think Unipet's operations would look like if the regulator does not meet with you and this does not change? What is going to be the fate of your company and the operations of the 25 operators in the next year?
Well, the first concern that our business would be the fate of our customers. And they will be greatly inconvenienced as we close down outlets. And close down not because we want to.
Now, looking at the possibility of closing up the outlets, Mr. Naraynsingh mentioned a few dealers are telling you that they are ready to exit the industry. You've written to PS yesterday. You're asking for a little bit of leeway. in the margin itself. You're seeing and you're giving the assurance that that is not going to affect the consumer.
That's the model we're proposing. So the decision has to be the regulator, but that's what we're promoting.
Mr. Ryan, before I wrap this interview, I know we have the Minister of Energy coming on in a short bit. I do want to ask you quickly about the CNG model, which is a discussion that continues. And I know that we're talking about fuel supply. And when we talk about fuel, CNG is an alternative that the government, our successive governments have been pushing. What is the dealers, or why are the dealers saying that this model is not sustainable, if it is that there are so many allowances being given to push this direction?
To dispense CNG, you have a very high industrial rate of electricity. CNG is really a cheap fuel, but the actual dispensation of that fuel is very costly. And as a result, what they have done, they have put the burden on the dealers to pay that cost. And this is what is causing a real problem for the dealers.
And that is also in the proposal that you've sent to...
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Are your dealers going to exit the market? Because that was a sentiment that it's been... How many dealers have said to you that they are ready to exit this market?
Oh, all the dealers, everyone.
Again, is this action simply to flex muscles on the part of the government to say that we just don't like this operating the way that it is, so we're going to stop doing it?
Hema, this is that people don't invest money to flex muscle. People invest their money to provide a service, so that they can feed their family, they can enjoy a certain comfortable in their life. So to use the term flexing muscle is really an aberration. Is not going in the direction of why people invest their money.
So you're saying that the dealers no longer want to support this type of fuel or the distribution?
Oh, they will support the fuel. It's government policy. What I'm saying is that it has to be cost effective.
Okay, so where do we find the middle ground in this? So the dealers are saying they will support, so they will support it, so that there's going to be no fluctuation in the supply, that they will continue to distribute it?
Yes, if the government is really serious about providing the service, they have to make it cost effective for people to invest and get the product to the consumer.
But the government has given subsidies for conversion kits. They've given subsidies to the dealer.
That's right. So who are the people making the money? You bring in a conversion kit for $100, you sell it for $15,000, and then the dealer have to pay $10,000 a month, $15,000 a month demand charge, electricity charge. So who is making the money?
I know that
You see, there's a value chain in this whole thing.
I know that we're out of time for this, so we will definitely pick up on this point in a little bit. But I do want to ask you, Mr. Ali, in terms of the decisions, when you say that the dealers had no other choice but to take their action yesterday to cut costs, was there a breach of any arrangement that you had for the fuel supply? Is there a possibility that you're legally in the wrong on this?
No. No. We are required to give notice if we have downtime for more a certain period of time. But in this case, it wasn't action, it was a consequence. And there's a key point I wanted to make when you asked me about the model that I should have added. We operate a 24-hour business, and we have 8 hours of loading time. Outside of those 8 hours, we have extremely high overtime. And that also affected our ability to supply yesterday, because it was a long weekend, and there's extremely high overtime to be paid if we had to load. And in that case, our losses are deepened.
I know before we wrap, there's a question. Hema asks the Petroleum Dealers Association whether there are enough consumers in the market to make the CNG distribution profitable.
Well, there are only 7,000 cars, I think, with CNG. But that is an initiative for the government, you know, I mean, for it to be profitable, the government have to they are costing it. They're the ones who are costing it. But you see, the difference between Unipet and NP cannot fail. NP bank account is tied to the Treasury.
Yeah.
So, whereas Unipet suffer financial constraints, Unipet don't have that problem. I mean, NP don't have that problem.
Are you fearful that Unipet is going to fail, Mr. Ali?
Every day.
That closing comments there. And I know that we wish we had more time. The Minister of Energy is waiting. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I know we will continue. The UNIPED is saying that the biggest fear that Dexter Raleigh has expressed that his company and the company that he's a CEO of will fail. They look at the profit margins. They are waiting word from the Permanent Secretary. In a short bit, we will have a conversation with the Minister of Energy. One, what does he think about the situation and the current impasse between the dealers, UNIPED, NP, and the Ministry of Energy? Stay with us. And in the midst of all of this, we, the consumers, are the ones looking on. Thank you.